All right, let's quickly discuss education. It is sad to note that negative developmental indices in Nigeria continue to rise, while the positive ones keep nosediving. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization said Nigeria now has about 20 million out-of-school children. According to the latest global data on out-of-school children by UNESCO, there are 244 million children and youths between the ages of 6 and 18 out of school worldwide, but India, Nigeria and Pakistan having the highest figure. How did we get here, Mr. Chris?
Well, I want to add that we should also add the university students that are at home for over 6-7 months are part of that figure, or it should, I expect to have increased. Because we are talking of children, but our youth has also been out of school for close to 6 months now, so they should be added. I don't even believe that figure is right. It should be more than that, because that is just what they are captured. But how do we get here? Every year, irrespective of the fact that we're having dwindling fortune when it comes to economy and what we are doing, the World Health Organization has a standard, and UNICEF have a standard as a percentage to be allocated for education and health. Go and check in the last 20 years whether Nigeria has ever met that. We have not come anything close to it. So what do you expect? Then recently, with the issue of the Amajaris in the north, the former president tried to come into terms by establishing certain schooling within the northern area to be able to cater for most of these students that are out of school. But after he left office, that was also cancelled. I was in Bauchi State some years back, about 2-3 years ago, and most of these kids you are seeing on the screen here were what I saw in the north. No part of the north, Kano, Kaduna, Katsina, Bauchi, name it, everywhere. Children of this, you just see them in the morning. In fact, it got to a point that I wanted to make an attempt. Somebody just won, I shouldn't. I wanted to buy some loaves of bread to just give. By the time I bought about 5 and tried to give her, if you see the way they converge on that food and the rest of them. And I continue to ask, what are the government, this government, the state government in this northern part of the country, what are doing about this? What are they doing about education? You continue to see the decline in the area of enrollment into primary schools and secondary school. Look at the WAEC result and see what is coming from the north. Except for 1 or 2 states in the north that is doing very, very well. The other states don't seem to care. And I continue to ask, because some of these children are just, they are time bombs. That is why it is very easy for all these terrorists and the rest of them to recruit them and use them. Because, as we say, an idle hand is the devil's workshop. So, but we can still do more. A country that refuses to invest in education is doomed. And it's so surprising to me that India, I was shocked to see India in that bracket, because I know that India as a nation invests so much in education. But whether they are getting it right or not is the problem. Every other country, I was looking at the statistics over the yesterday or so. If you see what countries like Rwanda and smaller nations in Africa are doing in terms of education, at a point, I realized that a country like Rwanda has close to about 70 to 80% literacy rates compared to Nigeria. And you're asking if such countries should be having that, what happens? And the most unfortunate part of it is that most of our leaders today were people that benefited from free education. And you expect that they know better and know the importance of education, but they're not doing that. Today, the federal government is asking students to go and beg ASU to resume. The Minister of Education is asking students to sue ASU for not resuming. Then you can just ask yourself, what is the mindset of our leader? It's quite unfortunate.
All right, Biko, now let me corroborate Chris's stance. Out of 17 states in the country with the highest number of out-of-school children, 14 are in the north. Can we totally blame insecurity for this?
It's obvious. The insecurity, the problem of insecurity in our country is largely felt in the north. Look at the southwest. The southwest is the most secure geopolitical zone in our country. When the Americans issue their periodic travel advisory, they don't tell people not to go to the southwest because they know that the southwest is the most peaceful, most secure geopolitical zone in our country. You look at the states of the northwest, there are 7 states. Out of the 7, is only Kano and to a little extent Jigawa State that you can say are safe. The rest of them are facing serious problems of banditry. That's already 5 states. Talking about the North Central, there is no state in the North Central today that you can actually say is safe. Kwara used to be safe to an extent, but we are seeing the incursion of terrorists and kidnappers now into Kwara State, where schools are deemed insecure. Definitely, people will be reluctant to go to school, to send their children to school. Children must feel comfortable, must feel safe to go to school and return home safely. But between December 2020 and now, 11,000 schools have been shut, largely in the northwest of our country and in the northeast. Why? Because governments have picked up valuable lessons from what happened in 2014, April 2014, when Boko Haram invaded Chibok and made away with more than 200 students. You've seen students kidnapped in Zamfara. You've seen students kidnapped in Katsina. You've seen students kidnapped, even university students kidnapped in Kaduna. So how will people feel comfortable to send their children to schools? A lot of the schools in the rural areas have even been shut because government cannot guarantee the security of students in those schools. A lot of the schools in Borno State have been shut and the students have been moved to the state capital. The federal government gets college in an extreme end of the state, was moved to the state capital. They didn't want to lose the Unity School, so they moved them to, that's Monguno, they moved them to the state capital. So more and more students are being targeted, not just by Boko Haram, but by bandits. So parents are worried. They don't want to send those children to school where they will eventually be kidnapped. So it has worsened. You can see in the past, we were dealing with 13.5 million out of school children. But by May this year, UNICEF told us that that figure had risen to 18.5 million. Today, we are being told that it's actually now 20 million. So apart from the insecurity in the north that worsens things, even down south, the cost of education is difficult for many parents to bear. Government has to help them to pay WAEC fees, pay for JAMB, you know, and for a lot of these students, once they pass through primary school, there won't be money for them to even take a step further to secondary school. A lot of them stop after primary school. Some stop after secondary school because parents can't afford the fees. So it's being suggested that, look, make education free at certain levels so that people can take advantage of that. But in a season in which we cannot even fund our tertiary public tertiary institutions and we are creating new ones, how do you convince government to stop taking tuition fees even for primary, for secondary schools? How do you convince government? It's such a difficult thing, but this is a problem that we have to address. Even in Lagos State, they have this problem. You must build more schools to take care of the teeming population of our people who want to go to school and make the environment conducive. Dilapidated structures, make them better so that students will enjoy going to school. The environment has to be inviting. A situation in which students are sitting on the floor, even in some of our states, including Lagos, you see students sitting on the floor to receive instruction. It does not encourage enrollment. They must come up with incentives that will help us improve the enrollment figure and get more and more of these children off the streets.
The figure is coming from not a political organization, it's coming from one of the most reputable institutions in the world. So like Babajide said, we were even talking of 10 million until UNICEF came with 18.5 million. But UNESCO is telling us that they are using, for the first time, multiple sources to arrive at this figure. So it is almost 90% accurate. And we are being classed in the same category with Pakistan,
Indeed,
with Congo in Africa, Ethiopia. If you look at Ethiopia and Congo, they have one kind of crisis, more or less at a state of war. In fact, Congo has been in a state of perpetual war, where Eritrea for the past 3 years has been fighting Tigray, So we don't think we have war in our country, though there's terrorism. But we are being put in the same category with these other countries. And if you look at it very well, we need to look for practical solutions. And I think one of those solutions is that we need to return back to public schools. Because that is the only way children from poor homes can have access to education. We should learn from what our leaders did in the past. The essence of public schools is to ensure that children from all classes, all backgrounds, we share ideas together, live together for at least about 6 years. So if your father is a commissioner or prime minister, you see somebody's father is a hunter who comes to school without shoes, you begin to learn about what poverty is all about. So in future, if you end up becoming a state governor as the son of a minister, you appreciate what poverty is all about. But we have killed that system. We now have a system whereby children of the rich will go to private school from primary school, secondary school, university, up to university abroad, and come back to run the affairs of the state. So they don't appreciate the problems the people are going through. What did Awolowo do in 1952? He introduced free and compulsory education. They could not fund it. What did they do? They introduced what they call salt tax, because everybody must eat salt. And between 1952 and 1954, with 400,000 students, they were able to kickstart free education. So when you are talking about Southwest is stable, is developed, it is that foundation that was laid. I will spend just 8 years. But today, everybody is talking about it. He left power when it was almost about 50 years. So we need to go back to public education, public schools. Then priority in terms of how our government spends money. You have a state with 300 traditional rulers. When you come to power, the first thing is that you buy cars for all of them, 10 million. For a traditional ruler in a community where the primary school is just looking for 1 million to buy furniture. Then members of the House of Assembly, you buy cars, 20 million for all of them. Then you have public schools that are just looking for just 1 million to buy furniture. So we need to change our priority. Because what we are doing is that we are building monsters that will rise up against us in the future if we are not careful. We are building a pool where terrorists will recruit, we find it very easy to recruit, to endanger our lives. Once there is threat to stability anywhere, it's a threat to stability everywhere. So this problem is our problem, and we must address it in a practical and meaningful way.
All right, so Mr. Chris, talking about how expensive education is in Nigeria, what can the government actually do about this?
Well, a lot. Subsidize. We just have to learn how to subsidize. It's not just petroleum. We are spending in the wrong areas. And that is the problem. Education is key. Anybody that is coming or that is going to assure me that he will handle the education sector in Nigeria, I will vote for the person. That is if he's sincere. Why am I saying this? Let me give you a practical example. All through my secondary school in Lagos State, my parents didn't pay a dime. I went to Ojota Secondary School. From Ojota Secondary School, I went to Gbobi College. My parents never paid a dime. From there, I moved to university. I moved to Lagos State University. All my schools, I've schooled in Lagos. At Lagos State University, my parents never paid a dime during our time. I was in LASO between 1986 and 1990. Apart from this, we were just paying about 100 or 98 naira or whatever. Do you know what that did to us? So many people went to school. So many of the top young men you are seeing across Nigeria now went to those free education schools. They were able to, in fact, so many that parents that couldn't afford their children to go to school had their children in the university. And what happened today? I'm here talking. If nobody tells you that I went to King's College or whatever, all those so-called colleges that were mentioned in those days, I am a proud student of Lateef Jakonde. They used to call us Jakonde schools. You used to call them Jakonde schools in those days. But look at us today. With those that went to the so-called high school, all of us are in it together. And that is why someone like, we were talking about, someone like Lateef Jakonde can never ever be forgotten. Because when he came into government, he realized the problem. And he knows that building all the so-called mansion and the rest of might not be able to. What did he do? He went into a situation where he built just what they called the poultry schools. We just had the zinc and have blocks, but we were learning and the teachers were there. It was made compulsory. Before then, 1979 to 80, when we started, we used to have what was called the morning and afternoon session. When I was at Nigerian College in 1979, I was attending Nigerian College. Afternoon session, there was morning, there was afternoon, there was evening session. Lateef Jakonde came and abolished it and built all these schools, free schools, and people moved in. And today, that is most of those that our leaders today benefited from that. They wouldn't have been what they are today if they didn't benefit from that. So many of them, you see them boasting now, I didn't have shoe, I didn't have sandal, I didn't have head cap and the rest of them. You didn't have shoe, you didn't have sandal, you didn't have leg, but you were able to go to school. What of those children now that don't also have shoes, sandal, and the rest of them, whose parents cannot be able to afford education? What are you doing to better their lives? Instead, they're starting the funds, keeping some abroad. Some that they will not even, they and their own children cannot finish. And forgetting the fact that, you know why the rich is not sleeping? Because the poor is awake. Once the poor is awake, the rich cannot sleep. So whether you like it or not, there is insecurity, there is this. You that used to think that you can move from your village before with all the routines of security, you can't go there now. It's not possible. As they touch poor man, and so they touch big man. So our government should do the needful. This is a wake-up call for us. It's 20 million today. If care is not taken, in the next 2 years, it might run into 40 million, and we continue running into this problem.
All right, Biko, your final take on this, especially because this is quite worrisome, majorly because it does not even look like the government is ready to invest in education.
We are unable to even meet the UNESCO recommendation in terms of the percentage of the budget that should go into education. This year, the next year's budget, we've budgeted 5%. And we see some countries do as much as 15%. You know? UNESCO expects us to be able to do between 12.5 to 15%, and we are doing 5%. It shows the level of importance that we attach to education. So if you are budgeting 5% of your budget to education, where are you going to find the funds to improve the quality of instruction in those schools, to improve even the quality of infrastructure in the schools? And there is no magic. The World Bank has given us all kinds of suggestions on how we can stop this out of school children syndrome, or even reduce it. And one of the things they've told us to do is to make the environment more conducive, improve security. Goodluck Jonathan came up with the Safe School Project. How far have we gone? How safe are those schools, especially in the Northeast, the North Central, especially Niger, and Northwest? If the schools are not kept safe, there's no way we'll be able to address this problem. We have to also reduce the cost of education. Many of our leaders today were products of free education. When I was in school, we were paying 90 naira per annum. 90 naira, not 90,000, no. University of Ilorin that time. 90, and that was, I didn't squat. I was a proud landlord. I had my room for just 90 naira in the whole year. 90 naira. People will find it unbelievable. They'll think it's a lie. But as I used to say, or as I always say, Nigeria had been very good in the past. What we want to see is for the current generation to even witness a beautiful Nigeria. And that's why we keep appealing to government to take steps that will make our country better. Ease the pain that the young people are going through. Let them feel that this is a country for them. More and more people are going out. I'm going to lose 2 staff in my department, as small as my department is. I'm going to lose 2 staff. And both of them are going abroad. You know? And the 3rd person will probably join them after about 3 months. Nobody wants to stay here. Those who can afford it will go abroad.
Thank you, Mikhail.
So the country
Funny
better.
but sad reality. All right.